Inside Out 2 was good. It was almost perfect. They were so close. They almost had it. They almost nailed it. They get like 99.9% excellent. They kind of just tripped at the finish line with like one tiny detail. What do I mean? Let me explain. Well, let's start with things that I liked about the movie. This is going to have spoilers for the record. Not heavy ones, but I am going to talk about it. So if that bothers you, get out of here. But stay, please, because I like your company. Let's get into how I feel about it. Inside Out 2 was a sequel to the juggernaut of Inside Out. I think that Disney has been doing pretty well with their sequels lately. Granted, there was a huge trend of a ton of garbage sequels that nobody was asking for, or remakes that nobody was asking for. But then again, some of their new IP is not that great either. But this one was pretty good. I really like it when sequels don't try to do the same thing that was done before, but instead they kind of expand on the world they've already established, or just do something different. For example, the Toy Story sequels, all excellent because they don't try to stick only in Andy's room, you know? But this one was good. It did a similar thing to Harry Potter, like as a property, which was it sort of aged up with the audience that was the original consumer of the first one. Like the first Harry Potter is kind of for a younger level versus by the end of it, I mean, you saw they were thick. Bummer that we will famously never know the identity of the author. But I think that Harry Potter does that well. Conceptually, Inside Out aged up with the people who were viewing it, i.e. the first emotions were very straightforward, very simple, and then the entire concept of this one was that we're going through puberty, you got more complex, more nuanced emotions, which is interesting and true and very fun. An interesting tidbit about the first movie is those feelings are the 5 feelings that no matter what language you're speaking are universally recognized. Joy, sadness, fear, anger, and disgust are all universal expressions. Essentially, any human being expressing that feeling will express it in the same way, or you'll be able to recognize it. So you can smile in any language, which I think is sweet. But that being said, I think it's interesting to watch, like culturally, as we grow older, what emotions change and what emotions are different based on the culture that you're in. And those are things that take time. And I think it's wise to put it around the guise of puberty because that's when a lot of changes are happening. I think that's great. There were a lot of really fun, strong, and interesting choices too. The danger that you play with this particular movie is that if you have one character that is literally named after a single emotion, that means that we don't get to see that character go on very much of a journey. If joy is only ever happy or sadness is only ever sad, it's not interesting. It becomes very old very quick. That being said, in this movie, it felt like all of the emotions got a chance to shine and got to show off a different part of their personality. They did it a little bit in the first movie with letting joy get upset or hurt, things like losing Bing Bong, R.I.P. Bing Bong, great character. But I felt like almost every emotion got to have that chance to show a different aspect of their personality. They put a lampshade on it and everything. Anger at one point is drawing something cute and sweet, and everybody looks at him and they're like, what? And he's like, what? I can't always be the rage guy, which is true. When I say put a lampshade on it, that means they are intentionally calling out the joke, poking fun at themselves. So like disgust, we got to see the things that she actually liked, as in the crush on the video game character. I really like that choice because the idea that she likes something that Riley is ashamed of goes hand in hand with disgust. I really like that. Same thing with fear. At one moment gets to be brave because he has a parachute. That's fun because of the idea that he's prepared because of that fear. We also get to see sadness, try to be brave and face her fears too. And joy. Joy, very interestingly, has a moment where she gets frustrated with all the other emotions. That is also fun. And the idea of your joy getting frustrated because of your other emotions getting in the way is a fun, nuanced way to look at your own feelings. I love this movie. It's really good. They almost had it. They were so close. I will say one thing that is popular right now in media is sort of like therapy speak, as in people using like psychological and therapy terms to discuss things that are going on. And this is definitely guilty of that, but I think I'll allow it because that's what the entire premise is set up to do. It's literally talking about your emotions, your feelings, your behavior, who you are, your sense of self. Those are all things that are helpful to dive into in therapy. So I'll allow it. What else did I like? I really liked getting to see the rest of Riley's mind. I think that the brainstorm pun was probably worth like just the price of admission alone. That one got me. That being said, I do wish that the like quote unquote big idea, I wish that was something a little bit more shattering. I think that might have been an editing thing. It was kind of built up to be the moment where she breaks into the office, and then it just wasn't. One of the things that Pixar and Disney, when they team up, do really well is they think about the ending, and they think about where a story's going to land, and they make sure that they nail it, and then they kind of figure out the rest in leading up. And so if you're going to have any weaknesses in a Disney movie, it's going to be earlier on, versus the end of it, oh, they nail it every single time, Disney Pixar. I really do love this movie. And beyond just being like a good story, I think that the entire premise is a really good setup and tool for people to help communicate their emotions. I've used to work with children, and I've literally heard stories of kids who have seen this movie, their parents being able to say, like, okay, when they're throwing a temper tantrum, say, and they can be like, who do you think is driving at your console right now? And they can say, oh, I think that anger or fear is at my console, or maybe sadness. And it helps them articulate sort of what is going on inside. And so this movie also helps articulate that for a slightly older generation. You can tell that the creators have gone to therapy, and that's really refreshing to see that fairy tale-ness be used for like adult humans too. The idea that like your anxiety is not the same as fear necessarily, but it is an overactive imagination that is coloring your sense of things. And the idea that you cannot let anxiety determine your sense of self. And then the moment where she chooses joy, like that's so cool. That's really, really excellent, I think, as a film and as like straight up as a diagnostic and therapy tool for a person. I love the characterization of anxiety. I think that the ball was dropped a little bit with the other three characters in comparison. Ennui is a great emotion. I think that there were very few moments that it was able to be used in this plot, which makes sense because you don't want to watch somebody getting bored. Literally the opposite of what you go to the movies to do. You go to be entertained. So it's hard to have a character be bored on screen. So they kind of get around it with having her be like, oh yeah, I'm cool, whatever, just like faking it emotion, I guess. But that being said, I still think that was successful. Another thing that I was really impressed by, and this is difficult to do, is how well the parallel plot lines were built up in this one. They kind of had that in the previous movie, but I would say that the first one was like 3/4 the plot was inside Riley's mind, and like 1/4 of it was outside of Riley's mind. It was more like we saw the effects of what was happening from the inside mind, but besides just her getting sad and leaving, there wasn't a whole lot of action that happened in the outside world. This one was definitely more 50-50. 50% what is going on inside Riley's mind, 50% what is going on outside of Riley's mind. What is she doing? What is happening to her? And that's hard to do because every action that happens inside has to be accurately portrayed and manifest outside, and then the outside stuff, it's this cycle, like everything has to affect the other, you know, when you have a plot device like this. But I think they did it really well. Yeah, I liked that the focus was a little bit more external this time, but that's partially because we've already explored this world. We established the rules of this world, and now we get to play within them, so it makes sense that they don't have to spend as much time inside Riley's head to establish what's going on. They can just reference it, and they don't have to explain what it is. We should go back to her imagination, that kind of a thing. Very fun, very well done. And so I liked the drama. It reminded me of, if you want to watch like an Inside Out for grown-ups, I recommend getting Dropout and watching Mintopolis with Brendan Lee Mulligan and Hank Green. They do something sort of similar to this, and it's so fun. It's so fun to witness. I also liked getting to learn more about this situation and this setup that we're in. For example, like seeing the 5 primary emotions sleeping arrangements. Joy has like twinkle lights, anger has a sports pennant, fear has a nightlight, and like disgust is going to bed with as many things to make herself as perfect as possible, like a silk bonnet, sleep mask, and then sadness has like just a picture of like family. Like those subtle things, those details that are just so good and tell you so much about these characters. It's a really fun mechanism. They do a really good job of show don't tell. Heart in our mess, puberty is messy. Delicious. It's a great joke and great details and really adds layers to this story. I like the new locations that we end up, like the back of the mind, the place where secrets are stored. The sarcasm was a little bit of a stretch, but it's fun. Oh my gosh. And the memories that are lend to the sense of self, that like inner sanctum, I forgot what they call it. That I loved. The idea of this serene place that determines a person's sense of self. The idea of the memories going in there are precious was really, really great. I could see the reverence for these things and I bought it. You know what I didn't buy it for was Wish. These are orbs you could have sung to, okay, Chris Pine, okay, Disney. Sorry, I'm still mad about it. I will die mad. That didn't make sense. Why are you singing to the orbs? I don't care about the orbs. These orbs I care about. These are orbs I care about and I get it. Inside Out the musical would go hard. Would go hard. Absolutely would do that. Absolutely would direct that. Would play Joy. Let me know. Oh my gosh, and you could do like a 2-leveled Huron Who thing, you know? Upstairs being Riley's mind and downstairs being Riley. This would be good. This would be good. I'm just saying, it would be good. Inside Out the musical. Let's do it. Come on. TikTok. Let's get petitions for it. Maybe I could I should totally review Ratatouille the musical. I'm gonna do that. So, however, I did start this saying that Inside Out 2 was almost perfect. And by what do I mean? It was almost perfect, but they flubbed it at the last second. And that's because Disney is comprised of a bunch of cowards. My biggest complaint with Inside Out 2 is that it could have been gayer. And now, I don't mean that to be flippant, like, oh, everybody thinks everything is gay these days. No, I genuinely think that this movie was set up to have Riley be a gay character, and then they whiffed it. And I can't tell if that's intentional or not. Let me explain. First of all, the history of Disney and queerness is interesting, tricky. Lindsay Ellis has an excellent video about Disney villains and how they are often queer-coded without necessarily outright being gay. Ursula famously is based off of a drag queen, but even Scar or Jafar are all well-dressed and articulate and dramatic in a way that tends to lean towards, especially at the time, tend to lean more towards gay characterization. On the one hand, you could look at that and say, oh, that's bad. Disney is saying that villainy and gayness are synonymous. Or, then again, the creator of The Little Mermaid, famously, allegedly, that story was a manifestation of him feeling like he didn't belong where he was, and kind of was his ode to his own coming out. And mermaids in general tend to be very trans/gay coded icons. Also, there was a trend for a couple years in a row where every other film that came out had quote-unquote the first openly gay character in a Disney movie over and over again. It happened multiple times. And some of them were like laughable, like somebody said that 2 women in the boat of Finding Dory were the first openly gay couple. We didn't get to meet them at all. There was LeFou in the Beauty and the Beast remake, but it wasn't necessarily that we saw a gay romance. It was more played for laughs. Mrs. Potts is counseling LeFou about how Gaston is not good for him. And as a company, it seems that their company culture is very supportive of people who are in the LGBTQ community, especially artists. I'm not so sure about at the exec level, but I think that has more to do with people hiring their buddies than people being homophobic. And when it came to the drama a few years ago with the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida and Rick DeSantis, Disney was famously kind of against that. However, I would not necessarily go so far to say that Disney is fully in support of allyship. And look, I'm a little bisexual babe, but I'm not one of those gays who sits here and condemns Target for selling rainbow flip-flops at Pride. Mainly because I don't think that the goal is to squeeze every dollar out of every demographic. I think that there is genuinely a company culture that supports that. Yes, are they making money off of this demographic? Ultimately, it equips people who would not otherwise have access to it a chance to be able to be visible and be proud. I think that that is a good thing, making the active choice to visibly support this community. I don't necessarily think that is rainbow washing. Maybe that's what Inside Out was trying to avoid, was rainbow washing. No, because it wasn't pandering. It was okay. Because here's the thing, is Disney, more than anything, wants to appeal to everyone, to every demographic, and they don't want to offend people. And there are people who are still offended by gayness. And I'm not even necessarily saying that there's a strong contingent of that in America, because I think that, yes, there are still homophobes in America that are alt-right conservative types. But in the last 15 years, there's been a drastic shift in public opinion about this particular topic, i.e. there's way more support for LGBTQ issues than ever before. And so I don't think it's necessarily that Disney doesn't want to offend their American consumer base. However, I think the ones that they are worried about offending is their Chinese audiences. There's this guy who I heard in an NPR interview once, who his name is here, and he wrote this book called The Red Carpet, I think. And in that book, it talks about China is such a huge buying power. It has such a massive market for making money that it has influence on what gets made in Hollywood. Essentially, movies won't get shown in China if they don't present quote-unquote Chinese sensibilities. And that's a huge missed opportunity for massive funds if the movie has something quote-unquote offensive in it. And China has kind of a reputation of being somewhat homophobic as a country. So I think it's more likely that Disney was worried about offending that demographic than the conservatives at home. But that being said, viewing this movie through a queer lens is so good. And I don't even intend that in like a stereotypical way, like the idea of Riley being sporty or whatever, like, you know, like insert lesbian stereotype here. However, there are some moments that, if they are so fun to watch. The way that she reacts to the older girl and being so stressed out by her and really intimidated and thinks that she's the coolest ever. That is a very queer experience. That's everybody. That is an everybody experience. But within the context, makes it so juicy. And then they drop the ball at the very last second. One of the first things that happens after anxiety shows up is that anxiety bottles up the rest of the primary emotions and sends them to the secret vault where all the secrets are. Great metaphor, so fun. The idea of pushing down and bottling up your emotions and anxiety being the one that's doing that. Super fun. But they're broken out by 3 really fun characters that I almost wish we got to see more of. And something called Riley's deep, dark secret. And it's just this gargantuan thing that shatters the glass and gets them out. And they literally ask this character to come along with them out of the vault, and he says, no, it's not time yet. The others literally invite him to come out with them so that he can be out in the open. What I'm saying, they built it up to have Riley's deep, dark secret be that she's actually attracted to women. And that is so fun as a story. Everything from the video game character that she's interested in has long hair, to the idea of this like changing sense of self. And not for nothing, around that age is when people start to discover and determine that that is who they're attracted to. And I think it was so primed to be that narrative, but they don't go that route. Instead, at the very end, I mean the very end, in a post-credit scene, they had that one plot hole kind of dangling as a thread, but they tie it up by having Joy go and visit the secret vault and bring out the secret, and when she asks about it, he says, oh, it's that I burnt a hole in the rug. And Joy's like, oh, I thought it would have been when we peed in the pool. Ugh. And that's such a, like, pop kind of an ending. At least give us something. It was right there. You could have had it. I don't know. And maybe to give them the benefit of the doubt, maybe they are like, well, it doesn't make sense because kids these days don't really see that as a secret. It's something that they would need to hide. And I could definitely see, like, kids have a weird way of internalizing seemingly non-important issues. Like, I remember being 5 years old and being so upset with myself for years because one day in, like, pre-K, I bit a girl, and she didn't even think about it later. Do you get what I'm saying? There's like minor things that kids lock away and think like, oh, we're horrible, I'm terrible, and that's their big secret. But that being said, I think they could have just ended the movie where they did, instead of putting the post-credit scene, which I think ultimately made it weaker. Let that deep, dark secret be up to interpretation, or at least up to a third movie. But no, I think they got enough complaints about like, oh, we didn't follow up on that plot line, so we need it to be something. But they can't have it be that she's gay without it coloring the entire rest of the movie. For the better, if you ask me. Like, getting to see a young queer kid get so like frazzled by this older girl and like getting to have to deal with those emotions, that's so fun. It could have been so good, but it just wasn't. And granted, I am not one of those people who thinks that every single friendship in a movie is gay. For example, I don't think that Riley and her friendship with her other friends is necessarily queer-coded. Who's not gay? Let's see. Luke and Han, they're probably not gay. Everybody except for Samwise and Frodo in The Lord of the Rings, probably not gay. I don't have any other more modern references. Luca was gay. Luca, oh my god. Luca with the mermaids. Speaking of, like, gay iconography, another example with mermaids, Luca. Oh my gosh, that was another one that was argued could definitely be viewed through a queer lens and adds a whole nother layer. I'm not necessarily saying that any of these things have to be one way or the other. However, I think that it adds a really interesting layer to approach media with, and I think that it adds a lot to the story. Just let people be gay as hell. Anyway, maybe Disney will do the sausage party thing and may eventually make an R-rated Inside Out where we have a character that's horniness, and then we will be able to put this problem to rest. So again, I think that this movie is excellent. As a sequel, I think it's successful. Art-wise, I think it's successful. Even as like a Pixar Disney film, I think that it's successful, which, I mean, Disney has already set a really high bar for itself. The one thing is that I wish that it committed to the bit and made that character gay. Anyway, that's all my thoughts on that. Be sure to like and subscribe if you liked this. I don't totally know what I'm doing with this channel. I'm not exclusively a Disney content creator. I am just right now making videos about things that I have feelings about. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more of my thoughts on Disney stuff, link to my previous video here. And don't forget to like and subscribe. DFTLA SALAC. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment. I love you. Have a good day. Bye.